Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am the consummate professional worshiper of N'Keal Harry, constant doubter of Alvin Kamara, and would draft Terry McLaurin over Amari Cooper 10 times out of 5, your humble host, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by some of the guys. We have El Saboteur, proud father of Quentin Nelson, Scotty Miller fanboy, and has spent the last 48 hours watching the Batman trailer on loop, the working girl Jordan Smith, and fantasy football's premier internet doctor, loather of Adam Gase, the number 2 Walter Sobchak, but number 1 Tarzan, and thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, ginger mustache man Nick Bodiford. This is actually a podcast of mustached men currently. How are we doing tonight?
Doing great.
Ticklish. With our mustaches.
Did you say
how are you, Pete?
Ticklish? Nick is feeling ticklish today, everyone. It's good to know. Good to know.
How are you?
I am well. We're getting settled into my parents' cabin. Bert is currently, I don't know if the mic is going to pick it up, but is currently digging ferociously into his new dog bed, trying to get himself comfortable. We purposely got this bed to thwart he tends to go for the seam. So any kind of dog bed that like has the seam stitching beneath kind of where like the headrests are, or where like pillows are, or any kind of sides, he'll go right for the seam and just like tear it. So this whole dog bed has all the seams on the outside of the bed. And so I think he's desperately digging, trying to find a seam to go at, but he is being thwarted successfully. So that is
nice. Fine. What we found with George was that he basically does the same thing. And there's one well-known brand that markets itself as indestructible, and it's not indestructible. So if this doesn't work, then just buy cheap beds. Just plan on buying.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing it to. And also, like at a certain point, I don't know, how old is George?
George will be 2 years old on October 1st.
Okay, because I feel like at some point, like around 3, dogs tend to, like, you get a big settling period where then you're kind of like fine, and they're well past the puppy stage enough so that when you reintroduce a dog bed, they don't go ballistic on it. But
yeah.
But clearly that is not where Bert is at all of 10 months. Now he's maybe settled. We'll see. But but yeah, so far it's been holding up, which is a success. It's down here with me in the basement. So we'll see how it's good. It is getting a vigorous scratching currently. So if I suddenly lose train of thought in the midst of what I am saying, it's probably because I'm having all this noise in the back. All right. Well, we are a week away, 2 weeks away, I guess, technically. A week this Thursday, a week from that Thursday, will be the first game of NFL football for 2020. But what that means is we're a week away really from the last time to draft if you're going to draft before the season starts. So we are going to talk, obviously, the fantasy news that has gone down. And we have some news. Some big stuff has gone down, you guys, which we are going to touch on. And then we're also going to talk of some players who we just can't get enough of. So when you're preparing for your draft, you can make sure to target all the players we tell you to target and then blame us when they don't live up to expectations. Or give us full credit when they do live up to expectations and you win because of us. But before we get to that, let us do some news. And obviously leading off the news is the surprising / maybe not surprising, because they did try to trade him pretty aggressively this offseason, but the Jaguars released Leonard Fournette. So he is now a free agent running back. We have had lots of debates about Fournette on this podcast as to whether or not he is worth anything in fantasy. He is now a free agent, now gets to go to any team that wants him. Jordan, is there a team that you are like, low key, if Leonard Fournette signed there, I would be in on him for 2020 in terms of fantasy production?
Try to think about this. I was only thinking about laughing scenarios because of the Alvin Kamara news, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But I'm like, oh, what if the Saints just bring Leonard Fournette home on a cheap deal because he's already got some money in the bank? But there was one team, I think maybe Washington would be like a very they already have Adrian Peterson. If they want to bring in another person who's almost runs exactly like Adrian Peterson, just kind of a hard-nosed, like looking for contact type of running back, but like 10 years younger, then that would be a solid fit for them if they don't think their stable of running backs is currently up to snuff.
Nick, is there a team for you that you're like, ooh, man, I know you of everyone on this podcast, Nick, you are the biggest Leonard Fournette fan, and you would love for him to have a successful career moving forward and thrive in the fantasy. All the Leonard Fournette shares that you drafted in all of your fantasy leagues really need him to go to a good team.
I mean, what's funny is like wherever he goes, he's just going to nuke that backfield. And I think the most likely scenario is Chicago with David Montgomery. Was he injured his groin? This could be like a 4-week injury. I don't, forgive me if this is controversial. Maybe we need to talk about it. I don't think highly of Tariq Cohen. I don't think that he's good at football. They could bring Fournette in there to be their like banger. Cause I mean, Cohen's going to get a ton of work, but I don't think he's very good. The problem with Fournette is that he has no work ethic, right? Like the quotes from last year when he was on bye and they interviewed him and said, "What did you do on bye?" And he said, "I never worked out once. I didn't pick up a weight. I didn't hit the treadmill. I laid in bed and ate gumbo." Like that's always been a problem. It's why he's 240 pounds or whatever. I think he'd be a tough guy to let in the locker room. I could see somebody doing a 1-year deal like Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago seems to make a lot of sense. I've seen the Patriots batted around. I've heard that I think both them and Chicago are the two teams most likely to kind of reach out and kind of get a sense. Patriots make a lot of sense. Damien Harris has been balling out in practices and training camps leading up to the season, but Sony Michel hasn't really done much of anything since entering the league. And James White is not a back that you can rely on in terms of running between the tackles. He can do it, but it's not his game. And Sexy Rexy, I mean, the Patriots just seem like you also have to think about cap space too. And the Patriots have the cap in order to do it. The team, there are two teams, excuse me, two teams that make mild sense to me. And I would love it purely just to watch like fantasy minds melt. A lot of people have batted around the Chiefs as an option because of the fact that Andy Reid has done this before with Brian Westbrook in Philadelphia, was having a kind of a big bruising back to pair with the smaller back in Westbrook. So if that happened, that would just be incredible. I would love watching everyone who drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first 5 picks just weep because they reached high for a rookie. Or also 49ers, since you have Raheem Mostert as yes, he was great at the end of the season, but has he been dealing with injuries? I thought I something. Maybe he hasn't been dealing with it.
I haven't seen injury. I mean, he had the threat to hold out, and he demanded a trade.
Okay, maybe that was the only thing that was kind of up in the air. But anyways, so there's a lot of room. There's a lot of. I feel like there's possibilities for Leonard Fournette. I would love for him to succeed. I also do think that maybe not quite to Todd Gurley. Well, Todd Gurley, I don't think is quite an example of it because I think the Rams are a pretty well-run franchise. I do think Leonard Fournette, I would be curious to see what he is like in a franchise that is possibly well-run and maybe a little more like analytically driven. I'm just curious to see whether or not that invigorates him to be kind of the back that we saw in college. Or maybe not. Maybe it never translates. But it's certainly interesting. It's a big move that Jaguars made. And now that backfield, I know, Nick, were you planning on talking about them later? Should we save that backfield talk for later?
Yeah, let's pause.
Okay. We'll save that backfield talk for later then. All right, second in the news, Miles Sanders has been struggling through a hamstring, which has me all kinds of worried since I just drafted him in my home league. And now, speaking of Leonard Fournette landing spots, paranoid that the Eagles are going to go sign Leonard Fournette and just completely nuke Miles Sanders' fantasy value, despite the fact that I really wanted, I went and got him in my home league and I was all cocky about it. And now I'm paranoid that it's going to get absolutely thwarted. As our resident doctor, Nick, are you worried about Miles Sanders and the fact that this is taken, seemingly it's slowing him down in training camp?
I've been just following the advice of the Inside the Birds guys, and it's what I think Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher. Their initial reporting on it basically seemed to indicate that they found out what the injury is, and they just said, "Take a deep breath. He is okay. He's not going to miss time." And they hinted at, I think it was knee or ankle. in which both cases, if it's, I assuming it's not like terrible, right? It'd be an MCL sprain, a meniscus sprain, or like I'm blanking on the term, but basically a low ankle sprain. All of those things are pretty standard for NFL players. They like Kittle had them last year. The MCL and the ankle, I know they tend to sprain at the same time given the mechanism, but it's, what it means is a micro tear in the fabric of the tendon, and it's a rest and rehab injury, and those kind of things can take about a month. And so I think with the time that he did it, I think he's going to be okay. That's what the beat guys are saying, and they're beat guys that I trust. There's a lot that I don't trust, but I trust them.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about injuries that aren't like significant tears or strains right now, just because it's training camp, and I think teams are more likely, especially with the lack of contact training that they're able to get and the lack of practices just in general, that teams are more likely to put their guys on the injury report for like minor dings. And I think this, when I hear injuries like this, or like some worry, like some chatter about worry, I'm like, yeah, this seems like it's an injury that if it were week 8 or week 9 or even earlier than that he'd probably be playing anyway. Like, that's just the way NFL players are wired.
Cool. And yes, for all those listeners out there, I did hijack the news just to get Jordan and Nick to reaffirm that Miles Sanders, my second round pick on my home team, will be okay, and that it was a good pick by me. So yes, this is what happens when you host the show and you just recently had a fantasy draft. You get to do these things. Our quick side tangent, the guy who had our number 1 pick completely spaced and missed the draft time, so he got auto drafted through his first 3 picks. Sleeper's auto draft is just absolutely fucking incredible. I don't know what their algorithm is, but we play in a super flex league. His first 3 picks, he went 101 Patrick Mahomes. And then it snaked back to him in the second round, took Joe Mixon, and then at the 301 took Dak Prescott auto draft, just completely nailing it. So he came to a team that he's absolutely super excited about.
Oh, so you meant really incredible.
Oh, it's just insane. I don't know what Sleeper's algorithm is, but they clearly did not get the memo that you don't draft quarterbacks early. All right, finally in the news, we are not worried about Miles Sanders, but are we worried about Alvin Kamara, who has had an unexcused absence the last 3 days, according to Shefty, and might be contract related. So, hello, holdout. Jordan, are you worried?
I'm kind of worried about Alvin Kamara in general. I'm not sure he is the type of running back that they're just like, hey, I'm going to hand over the full reins of the running back workload to. I think they've proven that with limiting how many touches they want him to have. Latavius Murray is still in the backfield right now, and they have a really good offensive line, so they can very well put like a replacement level guy out there on the field. I'm not sure how much leverage Alvin Kamara has right now, and I'm not sure how much leverage running backs in general should have with contract negotiations. Unless you're Zeke Elliott playing for the Cowboys, and the Cowboys will just give you whatever you want. I'm always a little bit worried when running backs hold out.
Yeah, this sucks. This is not the kind of thing that you want this close to the start of the season. I updated the Saints preview piece, which everybody should go check all those out. I'm up to like 60 pages or something like that of writing
yes.
on all of
Go
the
to
previews.
faketeams.com. Nick is doing, for those who don't know, Nick is doing a team-by-team breakdown, talking every single player on the team, on each team who has fantasy relevance for 2020. So before you draft, make sure you are doing your research. And Fake Teams is the only place, literally no other place on the internet will give you good, reliable information like Fake Teams. I promise you.
Thanks, Pete. So, anyway, it's not good. Like this is giving me feelings of Le'Veon Bell 2 years ago. I mean, it's surprising to me that they were able to go for 3 days without the news getting out. Although Nick Underhill of New Orleans Football apparently was on this from the beginning. So we all need to go listen to what he has to say. But, Danny Kelly, he went through Kamara's Twitter feed, found the "I'm sorry in advance" tweet that he put out there. All of the signs point to him. Yeah. And all of the signs point to him being willing to sit out. This is a little bit different than Joe Mixon faking migraines and Dalvin Cook saying that he's just shelving the contract talk for now. Will he sit out? I don't know. But all of a sudden, I'm pretty okay with taking Derrick Henry instead of Kamara at the 104 spot. Regardless, it doesn't matter if you drafted Kamara. We all need to go try to get Latavius Murray.
Yes.
He costs nothing, and his value is very high right now.
Yeah. I was going to ask. You already kind of did it, Nick. But I was going to ask if Kamara, if you were drafting this weekend and Kamara was sitting there at the 106, are you confident in taking him there? Considering he's going RB4 in Fantasy Pros half point PPR, 5th overall. If he slid 1 pick or 2 picks, are you like, you know what? I'll take the even 1 pick as a discount that I'm willing to take, or at 106, are you still like, God, I am not sold?
For me, it suddenly I'm looking long and hard at like Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Joe Mixon, all these guys with insane potential who aren't threatening to hold out. I mean, Cook, I don't know. Maybe Cook goes to the bottom of that list, but I probably, this is really tough. I probably would take Kamara at the 110 right now.
Jordan, what about you?
Today.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, too, I would take him because I've been this person before. When Ezekiel Elliott has held out, he's held out for 2 seasons at least, I feel like.
He always seems to start the year with some question about whether or not he's going to play.
Yeah, no, it was the holdout and then the possible suspension and all that.
Right, there it is, yeah.
That's what happened. But I've been willing in redraft leagues to draft a guy like Zeke Elliott and probably Alvin Kamara now if he's in the later half of the first round, after pick 9 or 10, and you can get a quick turnaround. So you can get another one of the top tier guys right away in the second round, and then just kind of, hope that if there's a holdout, it only lasts a couple weeks, a month or so, and just be confident in your ability to just hang on for the first half of the season. Because if he comes back, once he does, you got a fresh first round running back who can come in and carry you to the rest of the playoffs. So it's all about just trying to hang on if you do decide to get Alvin Kamara late there.
Sweet. Well, there you go. There's the news right now. And now we're going to start talking some players who we love. So if you haven't already had your fantasy draft, then it's 100% happening this weekend. So with this being the final week of your research, crunching the data, figuring out your perfect fantasy draft targets, we are here to help. And we each have 3 players who we cannot get enough of this year in fantasy and are drafting in all of our leagues. Now, we have talked about a lot of guys. There have been plenty of names that we've talked about on this show so far. Adam Thielen, James Conner, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Jones, to name a few, et cetera, et cetera. The names that we're talking about. So we are going to try to steer away from those guys because we have expressed our admiration and obsession and love for them plenty in 2020. So you should still definitely be targeting those guys. These guys, though, we're going to touch on some names that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. And you should be still 100% targeting in your drafts, and also that are a little bit later in your draft. So, those top guys, you probably know who you want, and you've got that plan set up. But then once it comes to, middle to late rounds, you're like, what am I feeling? I'm going with the flow. Well, here's the flow that you should be going with. And I'll start us off because the first guy who I want to talk about ties into Leonard Fournette. And I spiced it up a little bit, you guys. I know I sent my 3 ahead of time, but I'm changing one of them. Because I have to talk about DJ Chark. Because DJ Chark is going as the wide receiver 21 right now, coming off of a year in which he finished the wide receiver 16. And without Leonard Fournette, Gardner Minshew is going to throw the ball 550 plus times. So I just think that DJ Chark is going to his already monopoly on this offense is just gotten even larger with the release of Leonard Fournette. He just seems like a guy who he had 118 targets last year. I think that easily pushes 125, 120, 125 this year. And another year with Gardner Minshew, those two will get better acquainted, better connected. I just think that he is a guy who you can draft going as like a wide receiver, 3, who you can get and will regularly give you wide receiver 2 production and could give you wide receiver 1 on any given week. So I like him. I like him a lot. And if you want a sneaky later guy, Leviska Chanel, you should also be targeting, because I think that's now the RB1 in Jacksonville.
Leviska Chanel being the RB1 is a pretty hot take right now. I will say, though, that a piece of news that we didn't touch on was Yannick Ngakoue getting traded away from the Jags. So if it's one thing that the Jacksonville Jaguars like to do down there, it's either draft very poorly with the first overall picks or just trade them away and get rid of them in some way. So the defense is not going to be as good. They've lost a lot of blue chip prospects over the past couple of years, just from pure dissatisfaction. So I anticipate a lot of that to actually continue with the Jacksonville Jaguars, people being dissatisfied, a lot of disgruntledness. And when that happens, teams lose. And when teams lose, they try to toss the ball around the yard a lot to get back into football games. So with that being said, this is just a long way to say that DJ Chark could get a lot of targets this year because the Jaguars will have to pass.
The only thing I'm going to add is that just to make an earlier correction, Pete, he's going as the wide receiver 21 in half point PPR, and I think that's an appropriate price.
Vic, who you can't get enough of in fantasy drafts this year?
Yeah, so evidently it's the same thing as last year, but Kenyon Drake is walking around in a walking boot. He has said that he's okay. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury has said that it's, quote, nicks and bruises. But that's a big deal. If in 2 training camps, and this one's an abbreviated one, just working out it puts you into a walking boot, I do think it speaks to his fragility. That said, I'm still taking him as a running back 1, but the guy that I want to get on all my rosters, even if I don't have Kenyon Drake, is Chase Edmonds. Kingsbury's spoken really highly of him, called him a starting running back in the NFL. I think that that's true. His skill set is dual threat. It is a pass catcher and a talented rusher. When he filled in for Drake or whomever it was at what point in the year, he had some King Kong box scores last year. He's shown that he can do it, and he didn't look bad doing it. It was not just a volume event. So yeah, draft Chase Edmonds. Just put him on your roster. It's these ambiguous backfields where he's likely to have 10 to 12 touches on his own that we want to go after in the late rounds.
And I think I won't pretend to say that I've watched enough Chase Edmonds tape to know exactly what kind of player he is. But I would put faith in the fact that Cliff Kingsbury, this offense clearly opens up a lot of space for running backs to be successful in. The fact that Kenyon Drake got traded midseason and basically was being told what to do whilst the game was going on, and still, like, in his first game, managed to rush for like 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against the San Francisco defense, makes me think that, like, any running back who has marginal talent and decent athleticism will be able to put up numbers in Cliff's offense. And so if Chase Edmonds is that number 2 guy, like you said, Nick, if he sees 5 to 10 touches per game just on his own, those touches are going to be productive. And if anything happens to Kenyon Drake, you can also say that David Johnson was there and everyone was super hyped about David Johnson, and David Johnson kind of started off 2019 pretty slow, didn't look great, wasn't ready. So they went out and got Kenyon Drake. If Kenyon Drake starts off the season, doesn't look great, gets banged up or is not as productive as they want, I don't feel like this team has any commitment to him where they're going to be like, no, we got to ride or die with Kenyon Drake. And so it could be something where Chase Edmonds maybe gets work earlier than expected. And I agree with you. I still think Kenyon Drake I am speaking purely in hypotheticals here. I'm fully in on Kenyon Drake, but Chase Edmonds is certainly a good running back to have in those later rounds.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm always pretty pro handcuff running back, especially when it's an issue of like maybe the running back is new, they just got there, or they have like an injury history or lingering injuries. And Kenyon Drake's never been a guy who's carried the full load of the backfield. Like even in Miami, for whatever reason, he was sharing the workload with several different backs over his time there. So yeah, handcuffing Chase Edmonds to him, especially when the coach says like, "Hey, he looks like a starting NFL running back," then he might get some playtime regardless of whether Kenyon Drake is even injured or not.
Yeah, it could be that maybe we see this backfield be more of a committee than people are anticipating, which I can't say I would love that. Jordan, who's your first guy?
So the first guy that I'm trying to grab in each draft this year is Jordan Howard. I've already talked about him in under league winners when we did AFC East, so I won't pontificate on it too much. But he's 89th overall, running back 32. And I really just wanted to take a minute to praise Brian Flores, just because I kind of like what he's done as a coach for the Dolphins for just for the short time he's been there. It seems like they're finally a team that's making a lot of good moves. And I like when players go to teams with good coaches, especially during this wonky off season. So Brian Flores can prove me right. That's only a bonus for drafting Jordan Howard. And I think a lot of people, if they don't think like me, will end up being out on Jordan Howard just because he's on his third team in 3 years. He's just not been the guy who's like hung on to a certain areas, and being in Miami might be a little bit scary, especially when the offensive line there is like a little bit this season. But according to beat reporters, he's going to be a top goal line option. And like I said in our previous podcast, he was surprisingly efficient last year with Philadelphia, being the 6th ranked running back by DVOA. So if you can get him as like your 4th running back, and he's still going to be a potential starter, I think that's a pretty good flyer to take down at 89 overall.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably going to try to aim like higher upside at this point in the draft as far as running backs go, because I'm just concerned over the fact that he's kind of like the Adrian Peterson, cannot catch the ball kind of thing. But if for whatever reason, even though behind the bad offensive line, the Dolphins are able to find themselves in scoring position more than I think they will be, then yeah, he would have touchdown based upside. He's a flyer pick, but yeah, I'm more interested in guys who have a lot more complete of a skill set.
I like him because I think that the Dolphins backfield, like even if both him and Matt, their running back duo or room last year was just so god awful that the only place they can go is up. And I do think that Brian Flores, being of the New England coaching tree, is probably going to be, and given Matt Breida's also injury history, is that you're going to have a running back committee. And so I think Jordan Howard is going to it's not going to be one clear guy, which will be frustrating from week to week. But I also think that still means that there's going to be enough production there for a guy like Jordan Howard, who has been low key productive wherever he's been, to get you some fantasy points, especially like you said, Jordan, if he's going as an RB4 or 5, like that's a tail end of the draft that has some potential upside and is starting when you're normally drafting like guys who are second string running backs and hoping that they get a shot at a starting gig.
Just real quick, 4th or 5th running back on your team, not RB4 or 5.
Oh, okay. 4th or 5th running back on your team. Still. All right. Well, each got 2 more guys that we're going to talk about, but before we do that, we are going to take a quick advertisement hiatus. All right, we are back. Player who I cannot get enough of, and I will tell you, I drafted him in my home league this weekend, and I was real cocky about it. Everyone else in my league, like I said earlier, drafting their quarterbacks nice and early. Yours truly waited all the way to the 14th round to draft his first quarterback, and I had to go with my boy Cam Newton. Cam Newton has looked incredible in the Patriots camp. The fact that there's even a discussion about who's going to be the starting QB for the Patriots this year is just absolutely gobsmacking. You're buying on the upside here. And for me personally, there are so many fine quarterbacks, if you wait for quarterbacks, that I'm taking Cam. I'm trusting that if he doesn't pan out, I can find someone serviceable still on waivers. But I think that Cam Newton, anytime he has been healthy in an offense, has been a fantasy force. He was a top 12 running back, which we will I mean, he is basically, but he was a top 12 quarterback in 2018 when he played 14 games for the Panthers and was starting to play in that Norv Turner, an offense that was actually kind of constructed to take advantage of him in terms of passing. It's always been able to take advantage of him in terms of rushing. And then obviously last year he got injured way too early into the season. Now he's had a full year of recovery from those injuries. Everything coming out of Patriots training camp has said that he has looked great. He has looked healthy. He's going as the quarterback 24. And I think that if we are going to see a pissed off, angry Cam Newton who wants to prove to the NFL that he still has so much left in the tank and that the injuries haven't like made him worse or taken away any of the things that he can do. Playing for a Patriots team in which Bill Belichick would love nothing more than to prove that Tom Brady was not the key to his success. And actually, he was the mastermind behind the dynasty. And so we'll be doing everything in his power to win with this team. So I love that combination. I'm all about that narrative. And Cam Newton as my QB1, I will take it no matter what. Even if you draft him as your QB2 or a backup quarterback, that's where he's going. I was just crazy and I took him as my QB1. Don't follow in my footsteps unless you want to.
I find it really reassuring that this happened in a Pete Rogers home league, which I'm assuming is a New England Patriots associated league.
They were all sleeping on him. It was stupid.
That's crazy. I don't think that there's a whole lot to think about here. It's a former NFL MVP who, like you said, has had about a year of rest. He's now playing with the greatest football coach of all time. I guess he's 31. Like he's theoretically you could have like 8 years left in his career. Like I don't. This is, I think, in hindsight, going to be well, no shit. We should have taken him as like the quarterback 5. Nice pick.
Yeah, I think when you can get a guy of Cam Newton's caliber that late in the draft, then that's a pretty good look, and it fits with the whole idea of just sit and wait on QB. You can get 1 or 2 guys in the back end of the draft that could each have the potential to hop up into the top 12. If Cam Newton's healthy, there's really nothing about his history, whether that's getting booted off the team in Florida, going to Blinn College in Texas, then going to Auburn, winning a national championship. This guy is just a driven NFL quarterback. So there's nothing about his history, I would say, that suggests that he can't come back and be just as strong as ever. So yeah, that's built on a lot of narrative, but Cam Newton is just one of those guys. He's wired to win. So I think he could put up pretty decent stats, even though the pass catchers I'm still a little iffy on.
Yeah, shout out to Cam Newton's college history of sneaking into the professor's office and erasing other people's names on tests to claim them as his own.
Hey, man, fits right in with the Patriots. If you're not cheating to win, you're not doing it right.
It's not all cheating is created equally, and there he's in the best spot to do it.
I'm here. Nick, give me another guy who you're targeting in all your leagues.
Cool. So yeah, I'm going to circle back to what we were talking about earlier. It's not terribly sexy, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But while Leonard Fournette was eating gumbo and Raekwon Armstead was on the COVID reserve list, Devine Ezigbo was eating up reps in practice. And I don't know if he's ultimately going to be like a dual threat guy. I think that Chris Thompson is absolutely going to be a part of the passing game out of the backfield. But I think Ezigbo is worth a late round flyer. He has reportedly looked good in practice, but this is a 2-part answer here. Leviska Chanel played every friggin' position in college, right? I mean, he was predominantly a pass catcher, but he lined up at Wildcat. He rushed. They get into the red zone and they'd have him just take the direct snap. He's a really talented guy. He's one of those guys. I have not looked at this, but I would not be surprised. I think I've got it here in front of me. If he was okay, not okay. He did. I was going to look at his return history, because like kickoff returning or punt returning is one of those, like,
pretty well.
Yeah. But point being, Chanel could be suddenly in line for like 12 touches out of the backfield or just creatively used somehow. And I think that he is more than just like a Denard Robinson. He appears to be a seriously capable pass catcher who has rushing ability. So using a late round dart throw on either Ezigbo or Leviska Chanel, I think could pay dividends. And I, with your last 2 picks in the draft, if you got a huge bench, then take them both.
Yeah, I made the joke about Leviska Chanel being their RB1. And I was only half joking, because I think that the thing that he gets is, while you might have worry about who exactly the running back is going to be that's headlines the Jaguars backfield, Leviska Chanel is going to be like a do-it-all. They drafted him for an express purpose, and can play in the backfield. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. He could be in that motion, moving all over the field. And they're going to do that. They are going to use him for that express purpose of playing him all over the place. So I think he's I think even if he's not there, if he doesn't play any running back for them, I think he's a great wide receiver to get, because I think he's going to be the number 2 guy on that team behind TJ Chark. And without Leonard Fournette, if they get real creepy, I don't know why I said that, wacky and sneaky, and use him as maybe a little bit more of a running back than we anticipate, then he just has, his value is just, going to skyrocket. I love that.
I think he's actually really similar to what Jalen Hurd might have been, where he very well may lock down the slot receiver role, and then suddenly is also taking 6 carries.
Yeah. Which in a PPR league, that is money.
I like Chenault's value in a dynasty league. I'm probably, without Leonard Fournette there, not extraordinarily high on the Jaguars backfield. If he's going off the board for free, maybe, but I might want to use some of my bench spots for other players. Leviska Chanel slipped in the draft because of a foot issue, and I'm a little worried about his viability.
Jordan, who's another guy that you can't leave drafts without?
So I put Baker Mayfield on this list because he has the potential, kind of like Cam Newton, where you draft him late and you can get another guy in the same area and see if one of them pans out. So he could be a flyer, or he could just be a starter on your team. And I think this is the season that we kind of have to see if Baker Mayfield is a viable NFL starter, not just a viable fantasy starter. So despite being in a really funky offense last season, and by funky, I mean bad, he still managed to finish as QB 20. So I think in a new system, he'll improve that standing. He's going currently as QB 15, 124 overall, and QB 15 is exactly what Kirk Cousins finished as last year, in the same Kevin Stefanski-esque system. He's surrounded by a ton of weapons. Jarvis Landry, Odell, David Njoku's still there, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt's still there, but they've added Austin Hooper. So they're giving him the tools to be able to work the ball in different areas of the field. The offensive line has gotten better. It's improved. And I just think in the range of 124 overall, like that late in the draft, that's when you start thinking about which QB I'm going to start taking just to really fill up spots. And if Baker Mayfield's going to prove that he's the guy, it's got to be this year.
I did I wrote the preview for the Browns today, and I was getting pretty excited really for all of the prominent players on the offense. Mayfield is, and I just have to keep advertising this, the Sharp Football's 2020 football preview. The information there is incredible. But basically, Mayfield splits in 3 receiver sets. All right, he's bad in 3 receiver sets, and he is excellent in 2 tight end sets. And Kevin Stefanski last year with the Vikings, they ran, their 11 personnel percentage was 35% under league average, and that's 3 receiver sets. And their 2 tight end percentage was second highest in the league. It was 14% higher than average. So, I mean, I don't, and I put this in the piece, I don't know if there's a better coaching match for Baker Mayfield than Kevin Stefanski. I don't think that he's going to necessarily be a high volume passer, but I think that he's a perfect guy to draft in conjunction with Cam Newton, Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater, these late round guys who on a weekly basis, you're going to have somebody who you can start that will finish in the top 12.
Yeah. And this could be the year that Baker does all of the exciting things that we were expecting from him his rookie year. Now that he's in an offense that's actually smart, and in an like a scheme that's going to be tailored to him rather than like trying to force him into it. So I love that. I love Baker Mayfield taking another flyer on him, especially since I feel like I love players who other people in your league are going to probably just willfully pass on because for whatever reason they left a bad taste in their mouth. Like Baker's last year was, and the Browns last year was so bad and so highly publicized that I feel like people are going to be like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. And so you can swoop in and probably get him even a couple rounds later than what he's going in terms of ADP in your own home league because of the fact that people are going to be like, I don't want to deal with that again. And you're like, psych, I'll deal with it. All right, and let's wrap it up. Each got one more left. My final guy who I cannot and will not leave a draft without, Curtis Samuel, going wide receiver 60 for the Carolina Panthers. And I know we've touched on him. I know he was a popular topic we talked about back when we did our, NFC South deep dive. So go listen to that if you want to hear a little bit more. I won't get into too much for Samuel. Basically, Samuel is a guy who saw 105 targets last year. So certainly there's a ton of work there. However, only 62% of those were catchable, which was 105th in the NFL. So Kyle Allen is a terrible goddamn quarterback. And no longer will he be playing with Kyle Allen. He will be playing with Teddy Bridgewater, who can actually hit the side of a barn, the open door of a barn in the side of it. So I think that Samuel is going to be used in a far more dynamic way than he was last year. Like he's the Leviska Chanel kind of guy. He can run sweeps. He can run screens. He can run out of the backfield. He can line up in the slot. He can get down the field. Like he is a dynamic playmaker. And with Teddy Bridgewater under center, who can actually be able to throw the football to him, I just think that I would not be surprised if he is a guy who suddenly comes out of nowhere and everyone's like, oh shit, we should have actually probably been drafting this guy a lot higher than what we are currently going as. Wide receiver 60. That is stupid low for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the same scenario for pass catchers with the Panthers is pretty close to what could be happening in Jacksonville. Not the discord and, everybody hating each other, but more so that they're not going to be winning a whole lot, I don't think. Not with that defense. They've had to bring in a whole platoon of new guys on defense using up all their draft capital on guys on the other side of the football from Curtis Samuel. So the passing volume could be because they have to pass.
Nick, who's the final player that you're targeting?
So his ADP has shot up quite a bit. Definitely in high stakes leagues. It doesn't necessarily look like it has come for the home league crowd, but Antonio Gibson, running back for the Washington football team. Sorry about the noise, boys. This was a guy that I learned a lot more about while writing the preview piece over the weekend. What I really like here is the depth chart in Washington consists of Adrian Peterson, one-dimensional, rush-only, old running back. He's 35 years old. Bryce Love might not make the team. Peyton Barber, rush-only back. J.D. McKissick, kind of a never-made-it pass-catching back. Antonio Gibson is a rookie running back. He's very talented. He's a very good pass catcher. I don't recall off the top of my head how much he ended up lining up out wide, but the kind of, to borrow a Lombardi phrase, the straw that stirs the drink here is offensive coordinator Scott Turner. Turner was OC in Carolina last year, where you might recall they utilized the NFL's premier pass catching back. Right now, they basically have a bunch of old washed up running backs and Antonio Gibson, who is an electric pass catching rookie running back. He's capable rusher in his own right as well. But the system that Turner and Turner's been with head coach Ron Rivera. He was there in Carolina with him too. He played a number of different roles. He was like director of personnel or something like that, and quarterbacks coach. Anyway, they know what they want to do. They've been around pass catching backs. This is the one that they have outside of J.D. McKissick, who if he's getting you excited, okay, go ahead and draft him. But I think what we're looking at in Antonio Gibson is a player who's going, I believe it was number 167 overall. Yeah, RB51 and half-point PPR. That very well could come out of the gates in week one with 15 touches in this backfield. I think Antonio Gibson has league-winning potential, and everybody needs to be using their last draft pick on him.
Yeah. And I saw something come out today. I mean, North Turner and Ron Rivera. Hey, you know, the last running back that they had, Christian McCaffrey, the guy can do it all. And they had an offense that took full advantage of that. Obviously, Antonio Gibson, I don't think is on the level of Christian McCaffrey, but he is a running back who can run between the tackles and can catch passes out of the backfield. Like, he is an explosive receiver. And so I do think that you could see a situation where we are worried about that backfield. We're not sure who's going to lock it up. Is it going to be a committee? And I think we could see, like, within the first couple of weeks of this NFL season, Washington and Ron Rivera and North Turner being like, clearly Antonio Gibson is our guy. We're running with this young core and we're going to see how it works. And AP, sorry, you'll get your 50 touches elsewhere.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where I kind of have to listen to the relative hype around Antonio Gibson in the fantasy community as soon as Darius Geis was kicked out of town. I tend to lean the other way sometimes when players are getting some hype, and I'm like, where is this coming from? But with Antonio Gibson, I can see it happening just because of the uncertainty surrounding Washington's offense. Like, I know Adrian Peterson is like a bionic man, but the cliff has got to come at some point. And if they got a guy who they really think is special and who people are saying is special and can do some things that a lot of backs can't, then you just got to lean into it. And if you're going to use your last pick on it, that's the kind of flyer you want.
All right, Jordan, wrap us up. Who is the final player that you cannot leave an NFL draft without?
So yeah, if we're talking redraft leagues and you're still putting kickers in your redraft leagues, you got to draft a kicker just on the board. And I chose the kicker number 4 right now, so you're not reaching too high to place this guy in there. But it's Greg Zirline, who signed with the Dallas Cowboys, and we've talked a lot about the Cowboys offense, and I think we've come to the consensus that it could be a high-scoring one, and that puts him in a good position to put up a lot of points. You kind of always want to tie your kicker to an offense that scores a lot of points because you're at least guaranteed to get some extra point kicks in there or just get into the red zone in general to help him make some easier kicks. So Greg Zerline, if people really remember, he was with the Rams. Last year was kind of a down year. He had a foot injury, still didn't miss an extra point last year. And he has made 4 or more 50-plus yard field goals in each of the past 3 seasons. So he has really earned the nickname Greg the Leg because he can get you those deep ones, which in some leagues is just worth extra points. And another part I'll say, I like that he's kicking in a dome. So I looked at the Cowboys schedule. He will be in a dome for at least 9 games this season. So that means that elements will not be really affecting him in the way that some other kickers might. And you won't be reaching for guys like, Justin Tucker is usually kicker 1 that goes off the board. Somebody usually tries to get cute and grabs him like a little too early. Harrison Butker is another good guy to grab. But yeah, Greg Zerline, I think he can do it for you if you're into that sort of thing, grabbing kickers.
I love it. This is the only place where you're going to get legit kicker advice. Is the RB1 podcast, baby. We have so many niches and we're filling them all.
Next week, defenses.
Next week we will do a deep dive into defenses. Just to wrap up this podcast about my home league, because I know everyone cares. Guy in our league, 8th round, drafted the San Francisco 49ers defense. And then left and went on auto draft from there on out. So clearly was just like, got to get my defense and then I'm out.
See, people tend to, like with defenses, with kickers, with tight ends sometimes too, they try to get a little too cute and they grab them way too early. So got to make sure you're getting them at the right value.
Amen. All right. Well, there you go. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We are there. That is not how not only you will get us, but also our fantasy baseball and basketball podcasts. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. You can follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Jordan at Jordan_Smith27 and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. Drafts are coming up. If you have any fantasy questions, ping them at us. We would love to talk with you guys, love to respond. We are happy to give our advice. We will be back at you on Thursday. Until then, peace.